Tonight's story is entitled The Emperor's New Clothes. Can't wait to see you. See you soon. The Emperor's New Clothes. Many, many years ago, there was an emperor who was terribly fond of beautiful new clothes that he spent all his money on his attire. He did not care about his soldiers or attending the theater or even going for a drive in the park unless it was to show off his new clothes. He had an outfit for every hour of the day. And just as we say, the king is in his council chamber, his subjects used to say, the king is in his clothes closet. In the large town where the emperor's palace was, life was gay and happy, and every day new visitors arrived. One day, two swindlers came. They told everyone they had weavers that they could weave the most marvelous cloth. Not only were the colors and the patterns of the material extraordinarily beautiful, but the clothes had the strange quality of being invisible to anyone who was unfit for his office or unforgivably stupid. This is truly marvelous, thought the emperor. Now, if I had robes cut from that material, I should know which of my counselors was unfit for his office, and I will be able to pick out my clever subjects myself. They must weave some material for me. And he gave the swindlers a lot of money so they could start working at once. They set up a loom and acted as if they were weaving, but the loom was empty. The fine silk and gold threads they demanded from the emperor, they never used them and hid them in their own knapsacks. Later into the night, they would sit before their empty loom, pretending to weave. I would like to know how far they've come, thought the emperor, but his heart beat strangely when he remembered that there were those who were stupid or unfit for their office would not be able to see the material. Not that he really worried that this really would happen to him. Still, it might be better to send someone else the first time and see how he fated. Everyone in town had heard about the cloth's magic quality, and most of them could hardly wait to find out how stupid or unworthy their neighbors were. I shall send my faithful prime minister to see the weavers, thought the emperor. He will know how to judge the material, for he is both clever and fit for his office, if any man is. The good-natured old man stepped into the room where the weavers were working and saw the empty loom. He closed his eyes and opened them again. God preserve me, he thought. I cannot see a thing. But he didn't say it out loud. The swindlers asked him to step a little closer so that he could admire the intricate patterns and marvelous colors of the materials they were weaving. They both pointed to the empty loom, and the old prime minister opened his eyes as wide as he could, but he couldn't help. He still couldn't see anything. Am I stupid? He thought. I can't believe it. But if it is so, it is no one best no one finds out about it. But maybe if I'm unfit for my office, no, that is worse. I better not admit that I can't see what they are weaving. Tell us what you think of it, demanded one of the swindlers. It is beautiful. It is very lovely, mumbled the old prime minister, adjusting his glasses. What patterns, what colors. I shall tell the emperor that I am greatly pleased. And that pleases us, the weaver said, and now they described the patterns and told which shades of color they had used. The prime minister listened attentively so that he could repeat their words to the emperor, and that is exactly what he did. The two swindlers demanded more money and more silk and more gold and more thread, and they said they had to use it for their weaving, but their loom remained empty as ever. Soon the emperor sent another of his trusted counselors to see how the work was progressing. He looked and looked just as the prime minister had, but since there was nothing to be seen, he didn't see anything. Isn't it a marvelous piece of material, asked one of the swindlers, and they both began to describe the beauty of their cloth again. I'm not stupid, thought the emperor's counselor. I must be unfit for my office. That is strange, but I better not admit to anyone. And he started to praise the material, which he could not see, for the loveliness of its patterns and colors. I think it's the most charming piece of material I have ever seen, declared the counselor to the emperor. Everyone in town was talking about the marvelous cloth that the swindlers were weaving. At last, the emperor himself decided to see it before it was removed from the loom. Attended by the most important people in the empire, among them was the prime minister and the counselor who had been there before. The emperor entered the room where the weavers were weaving furiously on their empty loom. "Isn't it magnificent?" asked the prime minister. "Your Majesty, look at the colors and the patterns," said the counselor. And the two old gentlemen pointed to the empty looms, believing that all the rest of the company could see the cloth. "What?" thought the emperor. "I can't see a thing. Why, this is a disaster. Am I stupid? Am I unfit to be the emperor? Oh, it is too horrible." Aloud, he said, "It's very lovely. It has my approval," while he nodded his head and looked at the empty loom. All the counselors, ministers, and men of great importance who had come with him stared and stared, but they saw no more than the emperor had seen. They said the same thing that he had said. "It is lovely," and they advised him to have clothes cut and sewn so that he could wear them in the procession at the next great celebration. "It is magnificent, beautiful, excellent," all of their mouths agreed, though none of their eyes had seen anything. The two swindlers were decorated and given the royal title, Royal Knight of the Loom. That night before the procession, two swindlers didn't sleep at all. They had 16 candles lit up in the room, and they worked. Everyone could see how busy they were getting the emperor's new clothes finished. They pretended to take the cloth from the loom. They cut the air as their big scissors sewed with needles without thread. At last they announced, "The emperor's clothes are ready." The emperor came. The swindlers lifted their arms as they were holding something in their hands and said, "These are the trousers, this is the robe, and here is the train. They're all as light as they're made of spider webs. It will be as if your Majesty had nothing on, but it is their special virtue." "Oh yes," breathed the courtiers, but they saw nothing, for there was nothing to be seen. "Will your Imperial Majesty be so gracious as to take off your clothes?" asked the swindlers. "Over there by the big mirror. We shall help you put on your new clothes." The emperor did as he was told, and the swindlers acted as if they were dressing him in the clothes they should have made. Finally, they tied around his waist the long train which two of his most noble courtiers were to carry. The emperor stood in front of the mirror, admiring his clothes he couldn't see. "Oh, how they suit you! A perfect fit!" everyone exclaimed. "What colors! What patterns! The new colors are magnificent." "The crimson canopy under which your Imperial Majesty is to walk is waiting outside," said the Imperial Master of Court Ceremony. "Well, I am dressed. Aren't my clothes becoming?" The emperor turned around once more in front of the mirror, pretending to study his finery. The two gentlemen of the imperial bedchamber fumbled on the floor, trying to find the train for which they were supposed to carry. They didn't dare admit that they didn't see anything, so they pretended to pick up the train and held their hands as if they were carrying it. The emperor walked in the procession under his crimson canopy, and all the people of the town who had lined the streets or were looking down from the windows said that the emperor's new clothes were beautiful. What a magnificent robe! And that train, how well the emperor's clothes suit him! None of them were willing to admit that they hadn't seen a thing, for if anyone did, he was either stupid or unfit for the job he held. Never before had the emperor's clothes been such a success. "But he didn't have anything on," cried a little boy. "Listen to the innocent one," said the proud father. And the people whispered amongst each other and repeated what the child had said. "He doesn't have anything on. There's a little child who said this, that he has nothing on." "He has nothing on," shouted all the people at last. The emperor shivered, for he was certain that they were right, but he thought, "I must bear it until the procession is over," and he walked even more proudly, and the two gentlemen of the imperial bedchamber went on carrying the train that wasn't there. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this story from the roommates tonight. See you next time.